The court's indulgence of such claims, even if they are ultimately rejected, represents a serious intrusion on the president's constitutional prerogatives. The impact of these judicial intrusions on the executive responsibility have been hugely magnified by another judicial innovation, the nationwide injunction. First used in 1963 and sparingly since then until recently, these court orders enjoin enforcement of a policy not just as to the parties before the court, but nationwide against everybody. Now, since President Trump has taken office, district courts have issued over 40 nationwide injunctions against the government. By comparison, during President Obama's first 2 years, district courts had issued 2 nationwide injunctions, both of which immediately vacated by the Ninth Circuit. It is no exaggeration to say that virtually every major policy of the Trump administration has been subjected to immediate freezing by the lower courts. No other president has been subjected to such sustained efforts to debilitate his agenda. The legal flaws underlying nationwide injunctions are myriad, and just to summarize briefly, they have no foundation in the Article III jurisdiction or traditional equitable powers of the courts. They radically inflate the role of district court judges, allowing any one of well over 600 individuals to single-handedly freeze a policy nationwide, a power that no single appellate judge or justice can accomplish. They foreclose percolation and reasoned debate among lower courts, often requiring the Supreme Court to decide complex and consequential legal issues in an emergency posture with limited briefing. And they enable transparent forum shopping, which saps public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary. And they displace the settled mechanisms of aggregate litigation of genuinely nationwide claims, such as Rule 23 class actions. Now, of particular relevance to my topic tonight, nationwide injunctions also disrupt the political process. There's no better example than the court's handling of the rescission of DACA. As you recall, DACA was a discretionary policy of enforcement forbearance adopted by the Obama administration. And the Fifth Circuit concluded that the closely related DAPA policy, along with an expansion of the DACA policy, was unlawful. And the Supreme Court affirmed that decision by an equally divided vote. Given that DACA was discretionary, premised on the exercise of executive discretion, and that 4 justices apparently thought a legally indistinguishable policy was unlawful, President Trump's administration understandably decided to rescind DACA. Importantly, however, the president coupled that rescission with negotiations over legislation that would create a lawful and better alternative as part of a broader immigration compromise. And in the middle of those negotiations, indeed, on the very same day the president invited the cameras into the cabinet room to broadcast his negotiations with the bipartisan leadership of Congress, a district court judge in the Northern District of California enjoined the rescission of DACA nationwide. Unsurprisingly, the negotiations over immigration legislation collapsed after one side achieved its preferred outcome through this judicial means. And just this week, the Supreme Court finally heard arguments on the legality of the DACA rescission. The court will not likely decide the case until next summer, meaning that President Trump will have spent almost his entire first term enforcing President Obama's signature immigration policy, even though that policy was entirely discretionary, and half the Supreme Court had concluded that it was a legally indistinguishable policy was unlawful. That's not how the democratic system should work. Now, to my mind, the most